Labor's plans for a kind of Aboriginal-only parliament look day by day like the start of apartheid. Today, for instance, I've warned it's a mistake to just ignore Green Senator Lydia Thorpe as some sort of race-baiting, attention-seeking extremist who even called her own white father a racist. All that's true. But yesterday I said Thorpe is actually the Justice spokesman for the Greens, which won nearly 13% of the vote, and she would be promoted by the media. So you've got to treat her seriously. And sure enough, today the Age newspaper gave her space to write an opinion piece, it was a news piece too, to let her argue what's been obvious for years. If there is an Aboriginal-only parliament, that is just the start. How about treaties with all the hundreds of so-called Aboriginal nations? That's what she wants, Lydia Thorpe. And when it comes to treaties for Thorpe and the people pushing her, what's on the table is Aboriginal sovereignty, creating Aboriginal nations in law, so kind of apartheid. Now, Thorpe herself has made clear that she owes no allegiance to our Queen or to our Constitution when she last week made a big joke of swearing her oath of allegiance to the Queen, that she called the coloniser.
I, Sovereign Lydia Thorpe, do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will be faithful and I bear true allegiance to the colonising Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
Senator Thorpe.
And today in the Age newspaper, Thorpe writes, yeah, it's true. When I swore allegiance in the Senate last week, I identified myself as a sovereign woman. And she said, as Aboriginal woman Phoebe McElraith writes, my sovereignty predates the creation of the English language. No parliamentary oath could ever take that away from me. Now, to repeat, Lydia Thorpe is not on her own. And her opinion is that Aborigines, that they can have their own sovereign nations, it's endorsed by no one less than the Albanese government's Indigenous Australians Minister Linda Burney. And I know this because I took Burney a few years ago for an ABC documentary to what's called the Dingy Aboriginal nation that activists had declared around Cairns. And I got her to meet its supposed Prime Minister and its Foreign Minister. He issued us with passes to enter this new nation on Australian soil. Listen to how Burney responded to this example of apartheid.
I consider you a fellow citizen, a fellow human being. I don't know why there needs to be some sort of legal separation between you and me where I need a pass just to come and talk to you.
Well, it's a government.
Fascinating exercise. Yeah, I do approve of it.
Now, you may be thinking, what's a few bits of land, creates an Aboriginal nation like that, harmless, as long as they're happy. But right now, believe it or not, Aborigines own, through native title, or have got native title control over half of Australia. Half. And they have land claims that increase their ownership to nearly 2/3 of the continent, even though they make up just over 3% of the population. Joining me is the historian who's written about this in Quadrant Online. He's Keith Windschuttle, a former ABC board member and author of several volumes on the history of Aboriginal Australia. Keith Windschuttle, thank you so much for your time. Look, to me, this Aboriginal-only parliament that Labor wants to set up in our Constitution is just the next step to what seems an obvious and logical conclusion, Aboriginal sovereignty, a form of apartheid in Australia. Is that too alarmist?
Well, it's perfectly accurate, and in fact, it's been true for a long time. A lot of the Aboriginal activists who are now the leaders of the what you might call the Aboriginal political class have been saying we never ceded sovereignty. The country belongs to us, and you see demonstrations of kids saying always was, always will be Aboriginal land. They think we are that people like us who were born here and whose grandparents were born here are still usurpers, and that's why we have debates over invasion versus, on Australia Day. It's all about sovereignty, and the previous Aboriginal Voice, which the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission, ATSIC, they said in one of their documents, we want an Aboriginal state. And I've been writing about this for quite a long time, but no, I think people thought, oh, that's so far-fetched, it couldn't possibly happen. But I think we're now on the brink of it really happening. And And the breakup of Australia is not a far-fetched, ridiculous concept. It's one of the current political possibilities.
Now, you've written in Quadrant Online that there is, in fact, already a lot of land out there under Aboriginal control that could be transferred to so-called Aboriginal nations, self-governing, although inevitably paid for by Australian taxpayers. I want to show the map that you have found. Can you explain what we're seeing here, what this map is and what it shows?
Yeah. The map is actually published by the Native Title Tribunal, and it's of their decisions and the land that they've given to Aboriginal people. And if you look at the dark green areas, that's where Aborigines have exclusive rights. No one else can come on their land if they're not invited. The lighter green areas are those that are non-exclusive, which means they're usually pastoral leaseholds or mining leaseholds, and Aborigines can do whatever they want to do on it, but they also have to, do deals with the other users. But the land that is now determined by the Native Title Tribunal as either exclusive or partly exclusive is now is at 49.3% of the entire continent, and if you actually look at the dark green parts of that map closely, you'll see that in northern Australia, around Cape York, both the east and west coast, and in the Gulf of Carpentaria, the Aborigines have strips of dark green stripes where they are the exclusive owners of the shoreline, which means, in fact, that the hinterland as well belongs to them, because nobody else can if they're not invited or allowed, can come onto that land. So there's more, in fact, land that now belongs or being given back to Aboriginal people than is publicised at all. I'm surprised that I was surprised when I saw that map about 7 years ago, when it was 30% of the land that had been determined as under native title, and now it's 49.3%, and there's another 13% or so. It'll be eventually be 61 or 61% of the continent that on current native title cases, which will be Aboriginal lands, more than the rest of us. The rest of us, are what we have to share amongst ourselves is 37.3% of the continent, which is, in my view, of who has the who provides the most resources and income and capital. It's us minority people.
It's really quite strange, and I think your map actually underestimates the level of control, Aboriginal control over the land, because I see it doesn't include, there's no indication what's the state of play at Arnhem Land, but in fact the local Aboriginal land councils there have quite a lot of control over who goes into Arnhem Land and what can be done there. That's up the top end of the Northern Territory to the east of Darwin.
Yeah, there's other legal ways of giving back Aboriginal land besides Native Title Tribunal. In Tasmania, you'll see there's nothing that the Native Title Tribunal has approved, but in fact governments have bought up old sheep stations and other pastoral properties and given them to local landholders, and the same is true in other parts of Australia as well. No one has yet put together a total map of the whole thing, but I think most people would be surprised to see how extensive this process has gone on since native title was first defined into existence by the High Court in, 1992, I think it was.
Keith Windschuttle, thank you so much indeed for your time. That's history that a lot of Australians do not know and will not be taught. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Andrew.